Hello and welcome. I have a big stack of books. I have a symbolic globe behind me because we are moving continents. I have my jungle greenery representing what I'm leaving behind, the tropical climate of Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I'm moving to a small apartment in London. So I kind of need to get rid of some books. This is actually the first unhaul that I have ever done on this channel. I am not somebody who either buys or gets rid of books very often, although I think this might change when I'm in London. Like the last 4 years, I've been living in Kinshasa, so it hasn't been very easy to acquire books, except for audiobooks and Kindle, so that's mostly how I've got new books. I am super excited to be able to buy actual hard copies of the books that I want to read, or even just to use the library. To have more physical books in my life. I love a physical book. But I did think now was a really good opportunity to try and slim down the number of books that I've got a little bit because our apartment is quite small, although I actually don't think that I have that many books yet. Like, I don't have anywhere near as many books as I want to have. But there are still some books which just don't feel like they need to be in my life anymore. And I'll talk you through them. I should have organised these a bit better before I started this unhaul because some of them are kind of grouped, but they're on like different parts of the pile, so this pile might become a mess. First book I am really happily unhauling, and I don't know how we have this. This is a prime example of what I mean about the books being in different places on the thing. We have 2 copies of this. I literally have no idea why we have 2 copies of this. Anyway, Blood River by Tim Butcher. This is a non-fiction book about this travel guy, Tim Butcher, who comes to the Democratic Republic of Congo and journeys down the Congo River. Blood River, as it's called because of the bloody history of the Congo. The history of the Congo is a fascinating, incredibly fascinating and important subject that I really think the whole world should know more about. And if you want to find out more about it, then I highly recommend King Leopold's Ghost. I don't really recommend this, to be honest, as a way to get into learning about the Congo, because I actually think when I first read this, I found it really interesting. But having lived in the Congo, I now find it honestly quite repellent. It's basically just like privileged white guy decides to travel to the Congo because it's exotic and he thinks he can write a good book out of it. He then traipses around the Congo, putting a load of Congolese people's lives in danger as they try to help him on a journey which the country doesn't have the infrastructure for, and, he's in the middle of a war zone and people are not really that interested in helping him out, but they help him out anyway because he's basically pathetic by himself and he shouldn't really be there, and his wife's really worried because he's abandoned her to go somewhere where he might die for no reason except that he wants to write a book all about himself and his big adventure. That's kind of how I see this book now. I think I probably gave it quite a high rating on Goodreads. It's one of those ones I really need to go back to and change. But yeah, my perspective on it has drastically changed. So, au revoir, Tim Butcher. And in the same vein, I haven't read this yet, but Chasing the Devil, The Search for Africa's Fighting Spirits, that already in the title is not making me feel like I particularly want to read this. So yeah, don't know. I wasn't a fan, or I'm not retrospectively a fan of Blood River, so I don't think I'm gonna enjoy or really want to read this either. So this one's going too. Next up, on the same topic of travel books that I am happy to get rid of. This was Tom's initially, but I've persuaded him to get rid of it because I was so massively not a fan. This is The Happy Isles of Oceania by Paul Theroux, who I think is Louis Theroux's dad, and a famous travel writer. I read this I tried to read this when we went on holiday to Vanuatu, which is a country in Oceania, on holiday, and I thought I was going to love reading it because, it's always really nice to read about a place that you're traveling to while you're actually there. But I found this unbelievably self-absorbed. I think I haven't read a huge amount of travel books. And I'm trying to think of ones that I've read and really enjoyed. Like, I really, really loved a book called Tracks by Robin Davidson, where she recounts her walk across the deserts of Australia. But I think the difference is that she didn't set out on that journey in order to write a book. She did the journey because she wanted to do the journey, and she then wrote about it afterwards. Whereas when somebody is setting out with the purpose of writing a book, the whole thing, I don't know, A, feels a bit contrived, and B, in the case of this book, like, it felt a bit racist, a lot of his observations, and he also just, honestly seemed the most, repellently self-absorbed man I've ever read about. It was like the purpose of his travels and the purpose of these other cultures were exclusively there for him to reflect on himself and his own ego. And I don't want to read about that. Like, write about that in your journal and then don't publish it and share it with the world. So I was unimpressed with this, and I'm happy to get rid of it. And then we also have The Last Train to Zona Verde by the same guy, where it looks like he travels through Africa, and I don't want to read it. So that's going to. What else do we have? Let me put my books back. The New Life by Orhan Pamuk. This is a book that I picked up from somewhere or other when I didn't really have any books with me, and I think it was just a situation. There was like a bookshelf, there were like 6 books available, and this was one of them. So I picked it up because it said that he has won the Nobel Prize. Oh yeah, winner of the Nobel Prize of Literature in 2006, so I thought it would be worth reading. This is one that I DNF'd. I didn't purposefully DNF it, I just kind of stopped reading it, and then about 4 years later, as I was looking through my books to see if there was anything I wanted to unhaul, I thought, let's just unhaul this. Like, I have no desire to pick this back up. It's a really interesting premise about a guy who reads a book one day and it changes his life. I think it was sort of leaning towards being a bit thriller-esque, which is not really my thing. I don't really like feeling uncomfortable and scared when I'm reading. So yeah, this book, there was kind of, I don't know, a suggestion of madness being induced in this man by the book that he read, a suggestion of the book being some form of kind of dark magic, and he kind of becomes an initiate into like a cult of the people who've read this book, which changes their life. It was very unclear in what direction this book had changed his life. I love that concept of like one day you read something and your life has changed, because I think there is a truth to that. Like, I think we have probably all one day read something and our lives have been changed by that. Sometimes a book, sometimes a piece of news, I don't know, but it is kind of amazing, this idea that like at any point in our lives we could read something and we'll never be the same person ever again. I like that concept, but I didn't love the writing style of this. I was finding it hard going, and yeah, I put it down, have never really felt the urge to pick it up again, so I think I'm just going to pass it on. It kind of fell into my life by chance more than by choice, and so I'm trying to get over my like perfectionistic sense of needing to finish every book I've ever started and just get rid of this because I don't particularly want to finish it. I know Emmy from the channel Emmy Reads, who I've been really enjoying like getting back into her videos lately. I know she adored his book Snow, so I might give that one a go as maybe like a different way to get into his work, because I think there's some really fascinating concepts in here. But yeah, this one I wasn't loving it, so goodbye to The New Life. Other books I really didn't like. I think I did a reading vlog where I read this one, The Memory of Love by Aminata Fauna. I really detested this one. I found it really dull. It was a really interesting concept, and I thought I would love it. It's set in Sierra Leone after the war, and it's kind of about the way that the nation is scarred by the war. But we see the whole story through the eyes of this white guy who is working at the hospital because he basically can't be bothered to be a decent husband and father back in the UK, and so he sort of escapes over to Sierra Leone and is attracted to a load of women over there, and for some reason they're attracted back to him. I don't know. I just really didn't like any of the characters in this book, and I think I really struggle when I don't like people. And I found this one really dull. It was a slog to get through. I probably should have DNF'd it, so I'm perfectly fine with passing this one on too. October by Katja Balin. I was going to keep this for the cover, but I think I want to keep books on my shelves which actually feel like a positive representation of me and my reading tastes, and I didn't love this one. I know it's got a beautiful colour. I love the colour. I love the cover, and as an October child myself, I love the month of October, even just the sound of October. Is that a childlike thing? Do you feel like that too? Like the sound of the month in which you were born has a kind of poetic beauty to it. And so I adore this title, October, and it's about a girl who's called October, who also was born in October and born in the woods. And it's kind of about her process of unwilding, I guess, as she spends some time in the city and kind of grows up a bit. But she was like she was an annoyingly angry child. I think this is a bit of a theme. I didn't really like her, and I struggle with a book where I don't like the characters. So even though this is beautiful, and it even had can't obviously find them, but it had some nice little owl illustrations throughout it, which I really enjoyed. I don't think there's much point me keeping it. I'm never going to reread it, and there is so much of my library that I'm still desperate to build. Like, there are so many books that I want to own. Numerous books which I've read during the course of these 4 years where I haven't really been able to buy new books that I want to own physical copies of, that it seems silly to keep even attractive physical copies of books that I didn't really love. In the same vein, actually, this is another one. I think I got both of these books for Christmas this year, as in the most recent Christmas. And this one I'm really sad that I'm kind of sad to be unhauling it. But I know I'm never going to read it again, and that is A Single Thread of Moonlight by Laura Woods. They're some of my favourite books that I've read in the last few years. The 3 kind of YA coming of age type books that Laura Wood wrote, so it's A Sky Painted Gold, Under a Dancing Star, and Snowfall of Silver. I think I probably talked about them quite a lot on this channel. I just really, really, really loved those 3. And so I thought I thought Laura Wood, she was just like an instant buy author, and I was going to adore everything she ever wrote. And don't get me wrong, I didn't dislike this. I enjoyed it. But I just don't think I will ever reread it, whereas I think I will reread and really enjoy rereading her other 3. I think she explicitly posted about this on her Instagram stories recently, which I'm sad about, is kind of changing the direction of her writing style a little bit more and making it more kind of thriller and mysteries rather than just like cozy coming of age. And like I mentioned, I'm not so interested in thriller, mystery type stories. I guess I also read this one not realizing that that's what it was going to be, and so I kept searching for all of the parts of Laura Wood's writing that I love, and they weren't in here as much, obviously, because it was a different type of story. I just didn't I really didn't love the storyline of this one. Really didn't love the character. How do you describe that kind of character? I think there's a term for it. You know, like a woman who is really physically strong, and basically kind of like manly in her strengths, and she was really like good at everything in a way that was utterly unrealistic and a bit ridiculous. And at the same time, she wasn't very likable. So yeah, I'm not going to read this one again. But I'm sad that I feel like Laura Wood's newer books are going to be less for me than those earlier ones, which I absolutely adored, and they're some of my all-time favourite books. What category do we have next? I'm not even going to show you this one. This is like a random book of a missionary that somebody gave me before I came to Congo. I've not read it. I'm not going to read it. Then this one, I can't remember if I was vlogging when I read this one. 3 Cups of Tea, the Young Readers Edition. This was a non-fiction book about a guy who sets up a charity to set up schools in Pakistan and Afghanistan, but it turns out that I don't think he was like actually a particularly great guy, and I think his charity was a bit problematic, and B, this was just like terribly written. I DNF'd this, and I didn't even feel like the slightest bit of guilt about DNFing this. It was unreadably badly written. Which leaves us, where does it leave us? We have a few left. I think we are, okay, I'm kind of trying to like semi-categorize these ones. Most of them are teaching ones that I'm getting rid of now. Okay, I have this self-help book that I'm getting rid of, On Form by Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz. This is one of those self-help books. I can tell you in a sentence the message of this self-help book. Don't just manage your time, also think about managing your energy, because it's not very useful trying to do a really energy-intensive task and when you're at a period of low energy. Yeah, that's it. That's like literally this whole book. How on earth did they make a whole book out of that one concept? So voila, there you go. You've all read On Form. And lastly, okay, these are my teaching books, so you might not be interested in these if you're not a teacher. I'm not currently working as a teacher, although I'm still working kind of like in the educational sphere. But a lot of these, I just don't think I'm ever going to reread or reuse. I don't have any current plans to go back into teaching soon at all. And yeah, even if I did, just looking at them, no, even if I did, I really don't think I would use any of these. So, time to get rid, I guess. This one was a really interesting, I didn't read it cover to cover, but it was a really interesting concept. It was aimed more at secondary school teachers. I was a primary teacher. Reading Reconsidered, the basic message of this book, which I have definitely really taken away when it comes to thinking about education, is like every single thing that you do in the classroom, you should compare it to reading great literature. And would the children not just be learning more if they were reading great literature? That is basically the message of this book, and I am so on board with that. Like, I think that's such a good bar to set as a comparison. Like, when I think back to my own education, I feel like 99% of the time the stuff I was doing in school was of less intellectual value to me than reading great literature would have been. So yeah, I thought that was a really fascinating concept, but I don't think I'm really going to use the book. My used pile is getting wobbly. Then we have Battle Hymn of the Tiger Teachers, the Michaela Way. Michaela is a quite controversial school in the UK that has like incredibly strict behaviour rules. And I read this when I was working at a school where the behaviour was like horrendous. And I also attended a school myself where the behaviour was like consistently horrendous. And the main argument of this is like, have a really strict behaviour policy. Children will learn more and they will be happier. It was really interesting. I don't know what I think about education anymore. Like, I feel like the longer I worked in it and the more I read about it, I just have gone from being someone who has really strong opinions on education to kind of not even knowing what I think anymore. And like, yeah, it's a fascinating but really challenging topic, and I'm not sure, like, yeah, I don't really know what I think. I kind of felt like I would have loved to have gone to this school as a child because I was so miserable being at a school where the behaviour was so bad, and I would have just loved to have been in an environment where, like, everybody learnt and that was just the done thing and that was a celebrated thing and there was a real, like, positive culture built around that. But then on the flip side, I think Michaela probably goes too far in some ways. So yeah, an interesting read, but again, not one that I think I'm going to be coming back to in the near future. In a vaguely similar vein, Why Don't Students Like School by Daniel T. Willingham. This sounded so promising and I was really unimpressed with it. It's kind of been the theme of I guess that kind of is the theme of an unhaul, right? Books that got brought into your life because you thought they sounded promising, but then they didn't live up to that promise. So this is a cognitive scientist answers questions about how the mind works and what it means for the classroom. So it was supposed to be like a look at the science of learning and what science really says about learning and how this in some ways drastically differs to the kind of conventional truths of the classroom. So like, I think one of the big things that he talks about in here is that this idea of being like a visual learner or an audio learner or a kinesthetic learner, that this actually isn't based on science, and you might have a preference for a way that you enjoy learning, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn in a different way. Like, everybody actually learns in surprisingly similar ways, I think was the takeaway of this book. But I found a lot of the book just quite unclear. There were just pages and pages where I kind of would read the page and then go back and read the page again because I just wasn't really sure what point he was trying to make. I don't think a non-fiction book has been particularly well written when you feel like you're struggling to work out what the writer is actually saying and what they're arguing for. I sort of have a theory that kind of wishy-washy, convoluted writing style is used when the author themselves isn't really sure what they're trying to say, and so they try and cover that up by saying a load of really convoluted stuff that you as the reader can't really understand, so you just think that you're not intelligent enough to understand, but actually the author just doesn't have a really clear idea of what they're putting forward. That's my theory. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not that clever and I didn't understand it. Obviously had a few takeaways of this book, but I feel like my takeaways of it came from after I'd finished the book, when I read other people's summaries of what the book was supposed to be about. So yeah, interesting concept, but again, didn't live up to expectations. This one was actually really, really good. Excuse me. An Ethic of Excellence. Building a Culture of Craftsmanship with Students by Ron Berger. This is a book about an American teacher, or written by an American teacher, who creates a culture of excellence in his classrooms by involving students in these quite grand scale projects which go above and beyond what they would normally do. So, I don't know, for example, like making them draw a plan of a house to an architecturally high standard, or undertaking science experiments that like genuinely contribute something to the scientific world. And this was with primary school children. And he just lays out how to set these really high expectations, how to create this culture of high expectations, and how once students have tasted excellence, they never turn back. Like, it is an incredibly meaningful and impactful thing to a child to realize that they are capable of producing something exceptional, and children are capable of producing something exceptional. But obviously, like, time has to go into that, and the teaching has to be right, and the culture has to be right. And he's just a man who's clearly incredibly passionate about his craft. As a teacher, I was so inspired by this book. I think this is a book that, like, revived my energy at a time in which I was feeling a bit down and exhausted as being a teacher, so would highly recommend if you are a teacher. If you're not a teacher, probably less interesting to you. All these books are probably less interesting to you if you're not a teacher. Final teaching book is Quality Circle Time by Jenny Moseley, I think. Yeah, Jenny Moseley. I don't know if circle time is like a worldwide thing. Oops. I feel like it was a big thing in the UK when I was a child, and I also really enjoyed doing it with my class when I was a teacher. But this book, I don't know, it does feel a bit dated now. You can probably get an equivalent version of this kind of book online. It just has lots of different nice lessons that you can do for circle time, which is like a personal social development time where your class will sit around in a circle and share stuff with each other, and it helps to teach them how to listen and be kind and empathetic and bond as a class. And yeah, circle time's just a really lovely thing, and I did use this quite a lot during my teaching, but I don't think I'm going to be, as I said, I don't think I'm going to be going back into teaching anytime soon, and if I were to, I reckon I could still get equivalents of these lessons quite easily elsewhere. One book left that is not a teaching book. This is a descriptionary, a thematic dictionary, and I can only describe this as like such a pre-internet book. So it's basically, it says this in the back: how do you look up a word when you only know its definition? Answer: the descriptionary. So it's for like when you're trying to think of a word but you can't think of the word, and obviously now you would just search into Google all of the kind of related things to that word that you can think of, basically the description of that word, and then hopefully you would find the word. But this is like a physical way to do this, and it's quite interesting. Like I've opened it up now. Actually, I've opened it up now and I'm like, oh, maybe I should keep this. I guess it would be potentially helpful if you were writing. So there's like a page on gardens, and it just has loads of different things to do with gardens, like loads of different words related to gardens. But I don't realistically think I'm ever going to use this. So that's my final unhaul book. I feel like this has not been a particularly exciting unhaul, because I feel like a lot of the books that I'm unhauling are quite uninteresting books, which is why they're going. But hope you enjoyed nonetheless. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye bye. Wait, I found a couple more. The Lives of Animals by J.M. Coetzee. I did not enjoy this at all. It's a book about a lady who is so distressed by animals being eaten that she basically can't live her life, but she's also kind of a hypocrite because she like isn't actually a vegan, and she wears leather shoes and things, and her son and his wife kind of hate her. I don't really know. This was just weird. It's like, I think it was an essay collection. No, it was like a weird story that was written like a piece of non-fiction, but was actually fiction. I wasn't a fan at all. I think I probably won't read anything else by him. I just really didn't enjoy his writing style. And lastly, a cookbook. Deliciously Ella. I feel like this is such an aspirational cookbook to buy when you're like, I'm going to be really healthy. And then all of the recipes inside it are quite expensive and don't even look massively nice. So yeah, I don't think I've ever actually cooked anything out of it. So that one's also going. Okay, bye-bye.